eliminating game pressure with ground pressure. I'm Philip Stotter. I'm a clinical EP, and I'm the Director of Sports Science for V1 Sports. I'm a biomechanics expert, I like to say ground force nerd, and baseball nut. And I've been working with ground reaction forces for 25 years. And we're going to talk about today V1 and what we are, and introduce ourselves to this baseball community, as well as go through the technology. And then we're going to get to a point where I'm going to bring up a special guest from Louisville Slugger Hitting Science Center, Chad Miller, and he's going to do something that's so important for technology, or if you're thinking about integrating technology into your coaching toolkit, and that's how to use it, how to apply it, how to integrate it. It's great to get and capture all these metrics and data, but then how do I apply it? How do I apply a number to how I'm going to coach? What is the first step I take? Those types of things. And what we're going to show you is we focus on keeping it simple. Because if we keep it simple, we can apply it and we can use it. So let's start with our story. So if you don't know us, we were founded in 1995, so 25 years. We were one of the first companies to do a voiceover lesson over the internet. And we started in golf. And we've become a big name in golf. So if you guys are golfers out there, you might know us. But during that time, we also had lots of baseball and softball and other types of sports using our software for our coaches' ecosystem on how to connect players. And it was focused on video analysis. And today we have over 10,000 plus coaches using our software. And over 4 million plus lessons have been done through our system. What's our product? Well, we do two really important things. We do video analysis and ground force pressure analysis. And we tie, I'm gonna get a little sciencey here, we tie kinetics with kinematics. Because if you understand force, and I'm gonna go through a little bit of that today, but if you understand ground reaction force, we understand force is the reason why my mass moves, why my body moves. I can't get it to move without three important things, and I'm going to talk about that. But first, let me introduce our product. So we have a desktop version or lab setting, but we also have a portable, affordable, mobile version that you can use and set up anywhere. Like this mat I'm standing on right here. This can go anywhere, and you can use it to work with a hitter, to work with fielding, to work with athlete first, you name it. So our desktop comes with high frame rate capture cameras. We're able to display a lot of different features, over 30 plus features of drawing tools. We're able to sync ground force data with video analysis, and we're able to tell the total story of why this player did what they did. We like to call it performance technology. There's results technology, radar gun, Rapsodo, different things that tell you what happened. But then we have to backtrack, and we have to get back to why it happened. So that as a coach, you then can correct their performance metric. What is going on? What's the acceleration, the timing, the force it created, all those types of things. And that's why you need to tie performance and result technology together. And I'm going to show a little demonstration of that too. So like I said, we have a mobile version. You can run this type of lab setup with these types of kinetics and kinematics on a phone, on your iPad. It's completely wireless. You want to set up right before you take the field and go through a couple things. You want to do something and occasionally look at it. It goes anywhere. It's lightweight and there's no calibration. So if I'm a coach and I'm working with a player and I don't have a lot of time and I'm working with a ton of players, it makes it really simple to be able to apply this and get this type of data, right? But like I said before, it's not just data, right? What do I do with it? You know, and I'm gonna go through a couple of KPIs in a minute. Key performance indicators on how to understand when you see these ground force metrics, what to do with them, what's important, what's not important. And trust me, there's there's hundreds of metrics, but I always like to say measure what matters and what matters to you as a coach. And it's really important. What I love about this technology and science is it's a great way to communicate with your player. Because what you're doing is you're able to discuss a really important metric, and that's called feel. Feel is the force that your body is feeling against the ground and into all the actions that you do. How do we measure feel? We've all of you guys as coaches have probably talked about feel. What does it feel like? What are you feeling there? That's force. And if you're able to quantify that, you're able to have a better discussion on how to correct it, change it, adapt to it, whatever it is. So getting back to our hardware, we do pressure. And what's the difference between pressure and force? And I know that'll come up because there's different technologies that capture ground forces. Plain force plate captures vectors, one amount in a single direction. What's different about pressure, it's force over an area, so it's scalar. And if you play sports or you do action, you want to capture movement. And so you want to do it over an area. You want to capture really important things like how much force was applied to get my body to move, what velocity, right? We want to capture where it took place, right? But we want to do it over an area, not in one spot. And we want to take all that segmented information. I'm a clinical AP, and we moved away from force plates because we wanted to do gait analysis, all right? And we can't do a gait analysis with one area or one amount. We want to get that spread and segment it to what's going on. And that's why we use something like this. And it can be this size, or I can put pressure throughout this whole convention center. And everywhere you step, you'll be stepping on a pressure mat. That's how amazing we have come, or how far we've come with this type of technology. So I said, where, how fast, how much, where, control. There's no more important metric than being able to control yourself in a dynamic motion. And if you just look at that, you might go, okay, I'm not sure what I'm seeing there. That's a heat map, and that's giving me values of the forces that I'm in contact with the ground. And that little white dot is my center of force, center of pressure. And my center of force doesn't always match my center of gravity. It doesn't always match my center of mass. Because remember what I said? Force comes before movement, all right? And force is really important to know where it is when I'm impacting, let's say, the ball, or how fast I react and adapt when I figure out where that pitch came out of a tunnel. It's important to know where I'm loaded up, where I'm generating force at, what my velocity is. And that comes into how fast. I don't know if you guys can see that. There's a little metric there that says release factor. That's a time to contact. As soon as my body starts to accelerate, it goes into effect. And it goes into effect until I contact the baseball. And so I'm measuring in milliseconds how fast can I move once I recognize. Now, as a hitter, you need to be actionable. You gotta know what to expect. You gotta have a game plan. but there's a lot of reaction adaptation. And at a very high level, that's what makes someone a pro next to someone who's an amateur. The fast rate of adaptation, being able to work above compensation, and I've worked with pros for 25-something years. That's a big piece of it, is their ability to control themselves, increase their velocity timing, and then apply force at the appropriate time to create that outcome. And let's take a simple metric like exit velocity. And we know in even professional baseball, there's a deviation between mean, means average exit velocity, and peak, right? And that difference, why aren't we hitting, and there's a lot of reasons, but why aren't we 100-100? And when I say that, I'm gonna bring up a good friend of mine, Perry Husband always says this. I wanna be 100% on time and 100% efficient. How do I get there? Well, let's work back from my result. And that's that exit velocity. Let's find out what my mean is and my peak is, and let's work back to what I'm doing. And so that's what this technology is capturing. How do I apply that? And how do I validate my coaching? I got a 12-year-old who goes to an academy, plays baseball. How do I know his improvement? I can't base it just on batting average. I can't base it on what he does in the game. There's too many variables. That's historical data. I want to know, is his metrics going up? Does he understand how to use his body better? Those types of things. And in youth athletes, as Chad's going to explain, it's super important. So, ground mechanics, and it's been great because at our booth at 1013, if you want to visit us, at our booth, we've had so many people come up and say, I want to learn more about ground mechanics. Maybe they don't say that. Ground reaction force. And I want to understand what this is all about. This is a big piece of the future in all sports. And it's becoming stronger because of what it's delivering, and it's organizations like V1 Sports that is helping create that communication process. And I like to say, measure what matters. I said it before. There's three things at play. And there's only three things at play for all of us. And it's what makes us all equal. There's the world, this very large mass. There's us, this little tiny mass. And there's this incredible force that's working against us called gravity. And it's how we control our body against that force or use that force to create the actions we want to do. And it's that simple. And so if I look at it that way, right, then I'm able to understand I need two important pieces. I can't just have kinematics, which is like video, right? I need to link it with the forces that apply to why that mass on that screen moved. And like I said before, it helps us turn the field into a real science. So what can ground analysis answer? And I'm not going to go through this whole list, and there's a bigger list than this. But we want to kind of understand, if I use this technology, what it's going to do for me as a coach. How's it going to help me? How can I implement it? I've got 500 kids in my academy. I've got, whatever it is. It's great for, baselining. We're able to see basically metrics and communicate and understand that process with the player. How do they move? How do they shift their weight? There's so many pieces to it that really create this incredible kind of structure of understanding player first. And it's important to understand limitations and not base it just on cueing. Especially if you're training, younger adults that are, in sports, there's limitations, there's changes in growth, those types of things. So understand what's important in that. But like I said before, with all these things I listed, you can segment them down to those individual pieces, those individual phases of their movement pattern. If it's a swing, and you want to analyze 8 different things of their swing and how they went through it, from load, right, to launch, to contact, what happened during that when it reaches that result technology. Here's a great little thing I took at NFCA. We had Rachel Garcia, you probably know who she is. Incredible hitter, incredible mover. And we were able to capture really great information here. And so as I was talking, she was in the background hitting, and I was explaining how this works. And if you see there, her force is being applied away from a rotation, right? That little white dot on that screen, that little COP down next to her foot, she decelerated and accelerated her upper half. And if you don't get that white dot in the right place at the right time, it's really hard to create a lot of force and contact. You're depending on luck, you're depending on a lot of different things. Matching up her timing, her velocity, super important at that stage. And what is the amount of force that's going to be applied when she contacts that baseball? And if you understand ground force reaction technology or science, can I get that kinetic energy? Can I get that energy from the ground, from my body, because I'm pushing against, to the ground, out the bat, and to the ball? So you see those three little graphs there, and why we just did graphs and didn't focus so much on numbers? Because we're visual learners, and it's a great way to coach. Using graphs, using pictures. We have the numbers there too, but it really helps a hitter, a player, whatever the position, understand their movement so that together with their coach, they can make correction. It's versatile. It can go in someone's garage. What it shows here though, all right? The first pitcher, all right, setting up. The last pitcher, exit velocity. As a coach, I'm sure a lot of you raise your hand and say, well, I can fix that. I see what, what happened, whatever. Again, let's get back to validation. You see the three pictures below, that's the performance metrics that went into that result. When you tie these two things together and work backwards, you really start to understand improvement. And it's really key, and it expedites the coaching strategy. So I talked about KPIs, key performance indicators. We know a lot of these for results technology, exit velocity, spin rate. I mean, you can go on, right? So who knows a key performance indicator for ground reaction force? Exactly. So the key to this is teaching you guys how to understand this technology, how to use it, what to look for. We don't want to do your jobs, but we want to empower you. And that's what this technology does. It empowers you to validate, to see things, to know what to do. And that's why Chad's here. When he comes up, he's going to explain the simple process. All right? And how to integrate, how to bring a new technology. And this is the only way it's going to happen in baseball. And this technology's been in baseball, but kind of here and there, S&C. This is the new wave, and it's important to be a part of it. Just kind of a demonstration, and if you've been to our booth, again, 1013, just a swing and what is captured there. And what you visually see, what you don't see. What's important there is you can metric that, you can bank that. Say this is a player and suddenly something's not working, we're not seeing the results we did see. We're able to match those things up. If it's pitching up the mound, and no matter how big, like I said before, you want your whole field done in pressure, it can be done. And what else can I do with it? From athlete screens to performance. Okay, so physical screens, functional training, drill validation, hitting, pitching. Remember, it's capturing information over any area or space. If you're looking to screen your players, maybe you do FMS, maybe you do on-base U, maybe whatever it is, whatever you've come up with, this validates really important things, not just for hitting. Let's find out the athlete first and how I'm going to screen them, what to do with them. And as we age, okay, from young on big, it changes. Our bodies change. We need to continually assess and understand and not expect that you're just going to continue to get better. And if anybody's coach, say from 12 to 16-year-olds, you can have a really great player at 12 and they're not so great at 16, or the opposite. Why? This will help validate the why and what to do about it. So at this time, I'm going to bring up Chad Miller, who's the co-founder of Louisville Slugger Hitting Science Center. And they just added our V1 Sports, and he's going to talk about how he's been using it and adding it to his coaching toolkit.
Thank you very much. So thank you guys, number one, for listening to me today. I really appreciate it. As he talked about, this is just one of the coolest techniques, and I got to tell you, my background and why I'm here. I was approached, I've been an owner of Norton Sport Performance in Louisville, Kentucky for a long time, for about the last 5 years. I've been in orthopedics for the last 18 years of my life, and before that I was a college baseball coach at Marshall University, and then at Penn State Beaver, which is a JUCO near Pittsburgh. And what's so cool about this technology, and I will tell you, I have a weird, even more weird background than that. I probably over the last 2 years have spent probably $85,000 of my own money traveling around the country, meeting with different technologies, meeting with different companies to find the right solution. Because if you look at what the Louisville Slugger Hitting Science Center is, we're the educational and instructional arm for Louisville Slugger and Wilson Sporting Goods. And with that being said, I have a really big, basically, I have to give a lot, and I have to give a lot of credit to Wilson for taking the leap with me with that, because it's my responsibility to vet out technologies of how do I move the ball forward? How do I move the ball forward for baseball in general? And a personal story of why this is so important to me, my father passed away about 2 years ago, and he said to me, he's like, Chad, he's like, I'm very impressed and I'm very proud of you for everything you've done in the medical space, but you haven't done shit in baseball. He's like, you spent 30 years of your life dedicating your life to this game. Now it's time for you to take that technology. And then I also had a conversation with my college baseball coach, Coach Jeff Messer, in 2019 when he was the president of the ABCA, and he said, we had this really cool conversation about where baseball is headed. And he said, Chad, the problem with baseball right now is I've got all these baseball guys that are trying to learn science. And I have all these science guys that are trying to learn baseball. And there's nobody in between that has that background that can help out. And so I really took that on as a personal mission between my dad, my coach, and also my dedication to Louisville Slugger and Wilson, to really make it my life mission now moving forward to find the best possible technologies that are going to help our players move forward. And so what I came across was the V1 pressure mat. Because if you look at K-Vest, you look at Naraxin, you look at Kinematic, you look at Rapsodo, you look at Yakertech, all phenomenal technologies in their own right. But the problem is that we as independent business owners, we as small colleges, we as independent professional baseball organizations, there's no way in hell that you can afford half these platforms. So what's a systematic approach that I can allow my players the best use and best case to make it, number one, mobile? I love force plates. I actually use force plates in our scientific bat fitting. But the problem is number one, they're not mobile. I can't take them out to a field. Number two, it just gives me vertical pressure. And number three, I can't understand them half the time. So if I can't understand them as a scientist or somebody who has a background in interoperative neuromonitoring in baseball, how do I expect somebody who's a small Division III college coach in Northwestern Pennsylvania to understand that? So that's what V1 brings to me. So as I go through this, the stories I'm going to tell you about are, number one, how do we screen our players? So if you look at the way and why we're different at Louisville Slugger Hitting Science Center, is we take a personal approach. Number one, the first thing we understand about our players is how do they learn? If I can't understand a player and uniqueness about each individual player, number one, I can't impact that player. So it goes on from the learning skill sets, but also a way down, what physiological issues do they have in the screening process, or what problems do they have that I need to address in order for that player to succeed? We look at different things on Twitter, and I was talking to Coach Schneider from University of Louisville about this the other day. The worst thing in the world for a player to do now is listen to Twitter or listen to Instagram. You have people, like, not to pick on Jeff Fry, who's knocking guys that are trying different drills. You have guys that are trying different drills over here. And in both situations, they're not right and they're not wrong. But physiologically, what can I do to help my player succeed? And each individual player is unique. So until I find out this heat signature, until I find out how that individual player moves, how do I coach that player effectively? And how I do that affordably? So if we look at it, number one, let's talk about physics for a minute. Physics are something each and every one of us, we took in high school. We understand that the number one thing we have to look at is human electricity and human force. And so if you look at the lightning rod is the number one easiest way to understand kinematic force and kinetic energy transfer. Energy will travel the path of least resistance. You all know that. You've all learned that in 8th grade general science class. So we put a lightning rod on top of a barn, lightning hits it, it travels down the cable. Same thing applies to your swing. If I've got any type of leaking, if I'm on top of this pressure mat, if I have ankle instability, if I've got loose hips or tight hips, if I've got loose knees, tight hips, if I've got a pelvic issue, if I've got a pelvic angle that's out of whack, or if I've got an ankle deformity. These are all things that are big words. But how do I recognize that as a coach that has limited or minimal amount of anatomical experience? Well, I put on something like this and understand that my forces are going to travel up and travel down through the ground. So if you look at this, number one thing that you need to look at before you even look at the mats, the pressure mats, is what's my player look like? Stand and turn them around. So this is actually an example out of an athletics event that we were at 2 weeks ago in Panama City, Florida. This little girl here was running a sprint for me. She takes 11 steps to travel 30 yards. And if we look at this, we look at the left-hand side of the picture here, we did a screening of her ankle. And I was watching her run on a sprint. And we started her out dead center on the line. And as you can see, about 16 yards into her sprint, she was 18 inches on the outside of her target, outside of her line that she started on. The whole entire reason, no matter if I told her to go thumb to thigh, pinky to ear, was she had what's called a Valgus Ankle, which means her ankle actually kicks out. On pressure, this is a huge deal because she is physiologically challenged from the standpoint that she's not going to be able to do certain tasks that I asked her to do as a coach because she's limited. The second thing we look at is actually we look at her left arm. For every 5 degrees that your arm is towards the midline of your body, you actually lose 1/4 of an inch off of your stride length. So if you extrapolate that out over top of 90 feet, or the age-old wisdom of the 60, that's a huge deal. So just in 30 yards, this girl ended up going 18 inches off of her mark. By looking at a pressure mat, when I step on a pressure mat, I can see those changes. So the most important thing, like we talked about before, is 3 years prior to this, or even the 6 months prior to this, before my adoption of this technology, if I were to tell a player, hey, you've got a Valgus Ankle, I'm basically speaking Martian to that player. I'm basically Charlie Brown's mom at that point in time. It's wah, 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 wah. They have no idea what the hell I'm talking about. However, on this pressure mat, if we're able to literally look at the heat signature, and I can say, hey, I need you to load in your big toe to compensate for your valgus ankle or for your deformity of your ankle, now all of a sudden that little girl can take a look at that pressure mat, she can see that heat signature, and she can make that adoption and make that correction instantaneously. And again, it would have taken me 3 months to get that same thing. One of my favorite terms of all time that confused the hell out of me as a player was trust your hands. To this, until probably about 3 years ago, I had no idea what that meant, and I have a master's degree. So the same thing applies to these types of situations, which is you've got to understand, when you teach a player, you got to understand how they learn, and this thing allows instantaneous proprioceptive feedback, which means they learn by feel. So if I look at, whenever I'm looking at my swings, if I'm able to have checkpoints and check marks, I want to be able to, number one, have those balance points. Just like my car, if I take it in for the 31-point inspection, I want to be able to take this thing. So when my players step on the mat, number one, first and foremost, we're looking at balance. Number two, I'm looking for center rotational axis, which means, am I keeping my chin above my belly button? Simple as that. Am I in a good position to be successful? Number 2 is foot alignment. I want to be able to see where they're at, lining up from an anatomical position. Are they in a position to close off, or are they in a position to open up? The mat allows you to see that. But most importantly, it allows your player to see that. Next thing is weight distribution. How is my weight balanced out? Then I go on and I move on to the load. As I'm in the load position, number 1, am I loading back through? Am I leaking? You know, I think probably a lot of y'all here have taken on-base U. I think Don Slott does a phenomenal job explaining basic swing mechanics and swing foundations in his on-base U course. But if I'm here and I'm leaking through my ankle because I'm loading in my pinky toe, 6 months before me discovering this mat, I could have never had that conversation with a player. However, now my conversations say, hey dude, I need you to load in your back toe. So I landed my back toe, now all of a sudden, I've just generated force, I generated energy off of my back side. Now all of a sudden I'm here, boom. Now I need to be able to brace myself. I need to be, just like we talked about before, with Hernandez coming through her swing, now all of a sudden my forces are in the right spot, correct spot. But again, it's not about me teaching, it's not about me telling, it's about the player feeling. It's about the player actually looking on the mat, saying, oh my God, there we are. So if I follow true to form, the 24 rule of muscle memory, I get that player on the mat, I load 24 times correctly, boom. Now all of a sudden, guess what just happened to my practices? They became that more efficient because that player now understands it's not about me chirping in his ear or her ear, it's about him or her feeling this through their actual legs. They know what is correct. So if we go through kinematic sequencing, we look at the technologies, the wonderful technologies that are out there, like I said, K-Vest, Kinetrack, Neuraxin, all those things that are great, phenomenal tools that are sensor-based, markered or markerless-based technologies for biomechanics, they're great. But unfortunately, we're missing one thing, the ability for the player to feel that process. I can sit there and I can tell you all the time, like I said, we spend a lot of time, effort, and energy understanding how our players learn at the Louisville Slugger Hitting Science Center. But again, we either learn by seeing, we either learn by hearing, or we learn by doing. And most of the time, we're a combination of those 3 things. So if I'm able to really get my player in that stage and get them in that position, all of a sudden, boom, I'm in that position, I feel it. Now when I step away from the mat, boom, I'm in that same position. So that's the biggest thing. And teaching kinematic sequencing is a very challenging thing. So I had an opportunity to work with one of the Louisville, University of Louisville catchers about a month ago. It was an awesome experience because he had this sweet little hitch in his giddy up. He just had this one little thing where his knee, when he loaded, his first movement was actually his knee went backwards. Then all of a sudden, his hands got ahead of his hips. And this kid is just yoked. I mean, he makes me look like a little guy. He's just jacked up, he's just a specimen in the weight room, but he lost all of his pop. And it wasn't because he did something wrong from a sport or strength and conditioning perspective, he did something wrong from a kinematic sequencing perspective. And so without me having that mat, I was able to see that it was boom, knee went back, hands went forward. Now all of a sudden I watched his white dot. I watched the center of rotational axis drift forward, and I slowed it down to 160 frames per second on the video, and I realized all of a sudden he's leaking. But he was such a good athlete that he was able to correct it on a normal speed film. It looked like he finished far, he looked like he got his hips parallel and finished perfect. But the problem was, I wasn't able to see it. What was cool was, normally that would take me 3 weeks to correct that problem. He was such a good athlete, he was such an elite level kid, and plus, most importantly, he was so coachable, we were able to correct that problem in 30 seconds. He got it, he felt it, we did 3 drills, we took him out. All of a sudden now, I was no longer coaching, I was simply listening. I was listening to his feedback, which is the most important thing, because now it was his idea, not mine. I had his complete buy-in. So, again, going back to this, from a throwing perspective, if we look at this picture, if you look at this kid's right foot, on flat ground, this kid was 84 to 86, was a stud, absolute stud. He got on the mound, all of a sudden he looked like a weeble wobble. He was bouncing around. And I looked at him and I called his dad down and I said, hey man, I need to talk to you. And his dad was awesome. He was a military dude. And he's like, what'd my son do? Back talking? No. I said, your son, I can't help him until we fix this. So I got to move through this. I've only got 5 minutes left, but this is something you guys really need to pay attention to. Because if you can't get your mechanics right physiologically, or I'm sorry, you can't get this physiology right because of things like this, because he has a valgus ankle, you need to be screening this. And with the help of a pressure mat, you can see those balance points and you can see that instability. Every time you use a pressure mat, and we'll see it a little bit, you'll see a signature that goes back and forth. If that white dot goes back and forth numerous times, we know there's an instability problem. Then we need to go take a deeper dive into that. So one of the wonderful things I'm very blessed and very fortunate to do is we have about 41 pro guys that train with us on a regular basis. And these guys on our list are not only phenomenal athletes, they're just phenomenal humans. First guy I'm going to bring up is Tyler Fitzgerald, who's a 4th round draft pick of the San Francisco Giants. Tyler hit 19 jacks last year, hit 267, had 12 home runs. He is an absolute stud of a human. The one thing, the number one knock on his game is his throwing footwork. Tyler's about 84 to 86 across the infield. That's the only thing keeping him back from the major league roster. I actually did a commencement speech for Slippery Rock 2 weeks ago, and I titled my talk 2 inches after Tyler and Logan, who's on the next slide, because they're literally 2 inches away from the major leagues. The pressure mat made them money. I'm telling you this right now, because we were doing a thing, they were standard heel click guys. So they field the ball, great hands, heel click, land. When they landed on their heels, their butt shot out. Now all of a sudden the compensatory action of Tyler's mannerisms kicks in. Now all of a sudden, instead of Tyler bringing down his front arm, getting on top and behind the baseball and having a consistent release point, now all of a sudden Tyler's underneath the ball. Now when I asked him, I said, Tyler, where's your release point at, buddy? He's like, somewhere in here. I'm like, that's a bad answer. I need you out here every single time. So if I look at this, I come through and I change Tyler's footwork to just a standard step in front. Now all of a sudden, we really talk about loading that back toe, throwing downhill, getting that front side involved. Now we took Tyler from 86 to 91 in a matter of 6 minutes because of this mat. I'm not saying I'm the throwing whisperer by any means. What I am telling you, this mat's legit because now it had nothing to do with me, it had everything to do with Tyler Fitzgerald being able to feel his back toe and feel what it's like to throw downhill. Next case study is Logan Wyatt. Same exact thing. Logan is a very interesting human. Logan is about 6'4", 245 pounds, and runs a 6'5", 60. He is an absolute freak of nature. And the thing with Logan is that he got a little case, he got injured, and all of a sudden his arm action got bad. One of the major things was Logan wasn't transferring his weight back whenever he threw. He did a phenomenal job of it whenever he was hitting, but was not getting the same thing whenever he was loading up as a thrower, or in his throwing position. So Tyler is basically destined to 2 positions in life, number 1 DH or number 2 first base. We have worked extremely diligently this winter and this fall to get Tyler into this position. Whenever I first put a pocket radar onto Logan, Logan was 62 miles an hour as a second round draft pick. It's just not acceptable. He cannot be moved up through the ranks by doing that. But through this mat and allowing him to feel what it's like to load up his back half, I got Logan up to 81 miles an hour through simple throwing mechanics, backside arm circle drills, but most importantly, him being able to feel what it's like. And the feel, again, is the most important thing. So again, going back to my little girl down here in Panama City, I took her from a 4.3 in the 30 down to a 4.12 in a matter of 4 runs. Simply number 1, and running is probably the most impactful thing off of this device because I'm able to now get my hips parallel. 90% of your kids sitting in this room that you guys coach do not get your hips parallel to their target when they're running. With this mat, I am able to teach kids to get their hips parallel to the target within 1 step, which is unheard of. And with that being said, I'd love to talk to you more about this, and I can't thank y'all enough for your time. Please visit sluggerscience.com. V1, this mat has absolutely changed my life, and I've most importantly changed the lives of my players. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, everybody. You can tell I and Chad like to talk a lot, so we kind of ran out of time for questions. But what we did is we're going to set up, actually, in a results technology booth. And so at Pocket Radar, booth 1225. So if you want to come over and ask us questions, step on the mat, see how it works, come find us there, or find us at our own booth at 1013. But we're gonna head over there right now, so if you wanna come, ask us some questions. I know we went a little bit long, but we really wanted to get a lot of information out and let you know what we're all about. So thank you very much, thank you ABCA, and appreciate it.
Think so?